right? This is one of the most important things I want you to take away from this talk, right? One, don't use ChatGPT with like simple one-line prompts. Use longer, more complex prompts. I'll give you examples. And second is don't accept mediocre answers from ChatGPT. Okay. The default behavior of ChatGPT is to behave like an average person on the internet. And the average person on the internet is not really all that good. Okay. What you have, but ChatGPT is capable of being much better. And you have to push it. Okay. So what I'm going to show on the next 3-4 screens is actual phrases used by my students, which improved their average score from 5.4 to 7.2. Okay. One student simply did, first make ChatGPT write the essay, then said make it better. And ChatGPT came up with a better essay. Then he said make it better again, and it did even better. Then it said make it better the third time, and then that is what he submitted. Okay. Now this seems a little stupid, but it really works. Just telling ChatGPT make it better. In fact, there is another person on the internet. I haven't tried it myself, but what that person says is that whatever ChatGPT does, I give a sad face emoji to ChatGPT 2 or 3 times, and ChatGPT tries harder to make me happy. Okay, so this actually works. Okay, another one is that the student simply told ChatGPT, you have to make the reader want to keep on reading. You have to hook them. Okay. So the thing to notice is that these students are talking to ChatGPT as if it is an assistant or an intern who is hardworking and sincere, but a little lazy. Okay. Now this one line is also something I want you to remember, right? Think of ChatGPT as a tireless assistant, but who's a little lazy and will come up with basic simple answers first, but when you push it, it is capable of doing much better, right? The other thing that works is giving ChatGPT an idea of the context where this is going to be used or what kind of a response you're expecting from it, right? So here, oh, sorry, this is a different one. You can also, ChatGPT is pretty good at evaluating things, and it is good at evaluating itself, right? So what this student did, this even I hadn't thought of this, right? This student did was ChatGPT produced an essay. Then she asked, you know what? Rate this essay as if you are a knowledgeable instructor. Okay. And ChatGPT came up with a long evaluation. Then she said, okay, using this evaluation, try to improve the score of that evaluation. And I think she went back and forth with it 2 or 3 times, saying, well, no, your score is right now 5. Why don't you try to get the score up to 7? And doing this 2 or 3 times, and she came up with a much better essay, right? Okay, this one is similar to what another student did, but you can give specific feedback on specific parts of the writing that you didn't like. Like, okay, second paragraph is dragging. Can you do something about it? Now, this is a little long, so I'm going to let you read it. Pay attention to the interesting things in red and in green, right? Again, what you will notice is that giving, I mean, you are almost like a manager who has a new intern and you are trying to inspire her to do better, right? So these are all things. You're giving specific hints, right? Use an analogy. Come up with a very, so in this particular case, what happened was that this ChatGPT came up with the analogy of a ship in the ocean, and then the entire essay was written around that analogy of the ship in the ocean and what are you supposed to do in stormy seas and things like that, right? And so on. The other one is like, I mean, some of you, I mean, this is the entrepreneurship club also, right? One of the things you would have heard is the creator of Gmail has said that you don't want thousands of average users. You want 100 users who are fanatically interested in your product, right? That's the kind of product you want to build. This student happened to know that and has given that instruction to ChatGPT. and use that to come up with a really good essay, right? Another student gave these tips: use anecdotes, use quotes, use statistics. These are not things ChatGPT did by default, but as soon as you tell ChatGPT to do this, it is very good at doing these, right? But the key thing to note is that you have to provide the spark, use statistics, highlight independence, highlight these things, right? And so on. Include one small personal experience. All of these are little tips. This is what you have to bring to the table. ChatGPT doesn't do it by default. Okay. So these are all basic tips on how to get more out of ChatGPT. I mean, although I used the example of writing, okay, later on now I'm going to give you examples of a whole bunch of other things you can do with ChatGPT, not just writing. But in all of those, these kinds of techniques continue to work. Okay, so keep this in mind. Okay, you can ask ChatGPT for advice. Okay, so here is an example of me asking it that, if I hired McKinsey to do something, what would McKinsey tell me? So now pretty much all of you have access to McKinsey without having to pay McKinsey's fees. Okay. I mean, it's of course not as good as the real McKinsey. Some people will argue that even real McKinsey is not as good as real McKinsey, but the point is it does a fairly decent job. Okay. Also, it is very knowledgeable about all kinds of things. Okay. Do not underestimate what ChatGPT can dig out for you. Okay. Now, I wanted to understand why is the LBW rule in cricket so complicated. It's like, okay, it can't pitch outside the leg side. If it pitches here, then things like that, right? So if I were to try to find that out using Google or Wikipedia, it would take me, I would have to open 10 tabs, read 5 different articles, and try to get information from different places. Instead, I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT just came out with the full answer, including the history, right? Not just that, but I can ask it questions. Some parts I don't understand. I can't ask Wikipedia questions. Wikipedia, when I try to read, there are a whole bunch of sentences that make no sense to me because it's too advanced or too cryptic or using jargon. ChatGPT, I can ask follow-up questions and it is happy to answer follow-up questions, right? I can just keep, it does not get tired. It is very, very patient. I can keep asking questions, okay? Another thing is that I can use ChatGPT to get very, very specific knowledge, okay? One of the things that has happened in the last recent times is that all of these LLMs have gotten the ability to search the internet and collect information, right? So what I did was I told it, give me the top 5 people in NCL Pune. It came up with a list. I have no idea why Premnath isn't here. He should be, right? So, but yeah, so let's say I did that, right? It can get far more specific than that. So now I asked that, what, the most important person seems to be Ashish Lele, and I want to convince him about something. So go read up his background, figure out his interests, and then tell me what is the specific pitch I should make to him to convince him. And it quickly came up with a bunch of possibilities for me. And I mean, unfortunately, I don't know Dr. Lele that well, but at least at a big picture level, it seemed like it was picking the right things, right? And I could have done this repeatedly with all 5 in the list. I could have said, okay, no, I want to know the top 10 people. I could have kept going until Premnath showed up on the list, right? it just keeps spitting this out, okay? Also, it is very good at out of the box thinking also. Just anything you can think of, right? So I decided that one example of out of the box thinking is that we want to rebrand NCL to be more attractive to millennials. So we want to change the name, but we want to keep the acronym the same, right? So it came up with a bunch of things. God knows, neural cloud link and nomadic. So the thing you have to remember is that ChatGPT often doesn't get the full context. So you have to coach it, you have to push it, right? So I told it, you know what? It has to be connected to chemistry. Okay, we can't switch over to doing computer science just because, C is computer science and C is millennials will like that. And sure enough, it changed all its answers to include something to do with chemistry and science, right? I mean, the point isn't that this is a very interesting thing to do. Okay. The point is that you can use ChatGPT for other things. Okay. More important than all of this is that ChatGPT is very good at data analysis. Okay. Well, I mean, not just data analysis, all kinds of analysis and understanding things and summarizing things and so on. Okay. So here is an example. I uploaded a 105-page PDF into ChatGPT and asked it to summarize the conclusion for me. And it did that. Okay. Not just that, but summarization is an easier problem, right? I can ask very specific questions, right? I had a specific question about that particular paper, and I wanted to know that one particular experiment, had they conducted an experiment for this or not? And I asked that question to ChatGPT. ChatGPT read those 105 pages, figured out which experiment was related to the question I asked, and answered it for me, right? So again, you have to think of it as an intern whom you say, go read this paper, come back, then I'll ask you questions about it. Okay. And it does. Remember, it is still an intern. Okay. It reads it very fast, but it can make mistakes. Okay. So some of the answers might be a little off. You might have to go and double check it yourself. Okay. Now, in fact, for something like that, there is a new thing which works much better, and it is called Google Notebook LM. Okay. Now, the difference between regular ChatGPT and Notebook LM is that in Notebook LM, you can upload a whole bunch of your own documents, right? Let's say over the last 5 years, you have collected together 150 papers in your field, and you're only interested in those, right? You can upload all of them into Notebook LM, and now you can use this particular LM language model to answer questions only related to that, right? So if you can see here, what I have done is that I have uploaded about 7 different books in areas that of computer science. Okay. And each of these, I mean, some of them are 300 pages, some are 200 pages, and so on. All of them are books. Now, what I can do is that I can ask it a very specific question, and it doesn't go off on the internet and answer based on general principles. It will answer only from this set of documents. Not just that, but you will see there are 1, 2, etc. It has given me references. Each of these references is a direct reference into one of those books, one of those papers, one specific page or paragraph there, right? In fact, what I can do is when I click on that one, the corresponding page shows up, and the part that I am interested in shows up highlighted. Okay. So not just did I get an answer from the LM, but I also was given the exact source so that I can double check, I can read that paragraph and make sure that what the notebook told me is actually the correct answer. Okay. I have done this. I uploaded an entire book and then used that to write a report based on that book. And every time I would ask a specific question, it will come up with all the references from the book that were related to that question. It was really good. Okay, it really helped me. Okay. Another thing that can be done is summarizing YouTube videos. Okay. I mean, these days, all of you kids, right? You're like all doing video, and I'm a text person. Okay. I hate watching videos. And you guys keep sending me 1-hour videos, which I don't want to watch. So I can go to Gemini, Google Gemini. The others, I mean, Claude and ChatGPT don't do this very well, but Gemini does this well. What I can do is, you can see at the top, I just said summarize this YouTube video, and it comes up with a 3-paragraph summary. Now that itself is nice, okay, but sometimes I want more. right? And again, just like you can talk to your papers, you can talk to your documents, you can talk to the videos, right? I ask a follow-up question, specific. Does he talk about system 1, system 2 in this context? If yes, what does he say about it? And it goes through the entire transcript of the video and picks out the answer to this specific question, and it answers it for me, right? And I can keep doing this. So I can keep asking it follow-up questions related to what I want out of this video. And in 10 minutes, I get all the important content out of the video, and I don't have to watch the 1 hour video. Okay, by the way, this was a 54-minute video, which I got these answers in like, 1.5 minutes.
So it takes transcript or it analyzes it.
I think it does a little of both. Mostly it focuses on the transcript, but sometimes it analyzes the images in the video also. Okay. But some of those things are still a little flaky. Every once in a while it will miss things. Every once in a while it will not get the whole thing, or you have to ask the question in a different way. Every once in a while it will say, I can't read YouTube videos. Okay, I don't know why it does that. Then you have to scold it. No, you can't read YouTube videos. Then it says, okay, fine. I'm not making this up. This is literally what happens. Okay. You can upload images, photographs to ChatGPT and it can read them. Okay. Now, if you happen to have like a textbook from 1960s, which has some interesting table, you can just take a photo of that table, put it in ChatGPT and tell it, okay, now give me an, HTML version of this table. It will do it for you. But I took something more challenging, right? You can see this page full of trigonometric something is happening. There's a whole bunch of cancellations. And I asked it, explain to me what is going on. After every line, give me an explanation of how this line came from the previous line. Okay. And it went ahead and it did this. By the way, all of this, you're researchers, right? You know LaTeX. This is all LaTeX source for this is available for me. So if you have complicated equations and you're afraid of putting it in LaTeX, write it on a paper, give it to ChatGPT and tell it, give me the LaTeX code for it. Okay. You can use it to extract data from text. Far too many articles in media, right, never want to give you information in nice little tables. They want to write paragraphs of text and every sentence is written in a slightly different way so that there's no easy way to parse what is going on. But again, give that entire paragraph to ChatGPT and tell it, give me this data in table format. ChatGPT will do that. Okay. The best part is that you can upload entire Excel spreadsheets or CSVs into ChatGPT. And okay, here what I have done is there are two Excel CSVs I gave it. One was IPL matches and the other was ball by ball delivery. Okay, I did not explain anything. I did not tell it what these are. I just said, describe it and tell me what interesting things I can do with it. It figured out what the data is. It looked at the column headers inside, understood that. Based on that, it figured out everything. And not only did it explain the data set to me, but it also gave me a whole bunch of suggestions on what are the interesting analysis I can do with this data. Okay. I said, fine. Okay, let's do the analysis. By the way, I decided to give it a tricky and difficult question. Okay. The data contained information about who are the bowlers, who are the batsmen, and every wicket that was taken and all that. It didn't contain information about which of them are wicket keepers. So I asked it, can you figure out from the data who the wicket keepers are? Okay. And some of you who know about cricket will know it has done a pretty impressive job. Okay. If somebody has taken a catch which is listed as caught behind, that person is a wicket keeper. Or if somebody has the highest number of catches in many innings, there's a high chance they're a wicket keeper. things like that, right? And then I said, fine, do that analysis. And okay, no, I don't have that. It did a whole bunch of analysis. It caught all the wicket keepers except that out of 10, one of them was Rohit Sharma. Okay, I don't know. So again, I just want to highlight the fact that it can be very impressive and then make really dumb mistakes. So ultimately, you have to keep double checking. Okay, but it does pretty cool things. You can then tell it, okay, do the analysis. I know I'm not interested in just tables and data. Show me graphs. And it will show you graphs. Then I want to ask you, what will you do once it shows you a graph like this? Based on what you learned today. Sorry?
Review it.
Review it, yes. So that's a very important one. You should check whether this is really the correct data. What else would you do? One more thing you learned today. Do it better. Yes, do it better, and it will literally give you more interesting visualizations, right? The first time it will give you a very generic visualization. You say do it better, it will give you more. Or you can say give me 3 different visualizations for this, and it will give you 3 different ones. Some of them will be dumb, some of them will be interesting. Okay, all kinds of visualizations it is capable of doing. Okay, and I just want you to know that it isn't just basic simple things that it is capable of doing. Terence Tao is one of the top mathematicians in the world today. He uses ChatGPT every day to help with his mathematics research, with writing papers, not just that, but with coming up with ideas for proofs. And if he gets stuck, he asks ChatGPT for suggestions and so on, right? He thinks that by 2026, ChatGPT or LLMs in general will be good enough to be listed as co-authors on top math papers. Okay, so if you are not using ChatGPT in your research at a co-author level, right, then you should be asking yourself why not. Okay, of course it's not at co-author level, but at least for an assistant in your research, right? Until now, Premnath had a whole bunch of students, and those students were like assistants. But now suddenly all those students have become managers, and each one has 20 assistants, which is 20 different questions you can ask ChatGPT. So all of you suddenly now have to learn managerial skills because you all have a team. Okay. All right. One very interesting thing I want to show you, and what I'm going to do is do it live here. Okay. What I will do is, you can read this on screen. I am asking. No, I'm good. This I'm going. Okay, thank you. This I'm going to do with Claude. Okay, like I said, Claude is one of the best right now. I am going to copy paste this straight into Claude. And what I am asked it to do is write a web app where I can drag and drop 2 PDFs, and it will tell me highlight the differences between those PDFs. Okay. Now just imagine, think of that app, what all it has to do. Okay. And think of how long it would take an actual programmer to do it. And I know most of you aren't programmers. So if you thought that, oh, it would be nice to have such a tool, you would say, yeah, right. It would be nice to have such a tool, and it would be nice for me to be a billionaire, but those things are not going to happen, and you would go on with your life. But now you have this. Okay. So I don't know if this will work, but I'm hoping it will. Let us see. Can I copy paste? I copied the code. I'm going to paste it here. Oh, sorry. Okay, I pasted the code, I saved it, and let me open it. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see if it actually works. Okay, so now I have selected these two files. I put them here. It did something. By the way, the drag and drop part of it has worked. Okay, so that itself is already very impressive. And oops. Okay, sorry, that didn't work. What normally happens is that there is a third window which contains the differences. I'll just
Drag the second file.
I didn't drag the second file. No, I dragged both of them. Yeah, no, I need to drag both together. Yeah, it didn't work. So let me just try it one more time. Okay, I'm just going to talk to it as if it's an assistant, and I'm going to point out what didn't work, and let's see if it fixes it. Otherwise, I'll just show you what worked 2 times earlier today, and then we can move on. But usually this works, right? Whatever you see on the screen, you just describe it to it, whatever bugs you see, whatever problems you see, and it will usually fix the problems. Let's see. And there you go, right? And doing something. Of course, this output is not really a good output. Let me show you what happens with when it is actually working. Oh, by the way, every time it is creating a fresh program from scratch. So in this particular case, it used a program with a different interface. Okay. This one, I don't drag both PDFs together. I drag one PDF at a time. Oh, sorry. And if you see, it is pointing out exactly the 2 spots where there is a change between them. I had in the left-hand pane, sorry, I can't show you here, but in the left-hand pane, there is a 2 after the selenium, and that's shown up here. And also here, because QA seniors 2024, and everything after that. And you can see everything after that. Okay. The point is that a full-fledged web app, it has built in minutes. Okay. And the other point is that even not being a programmer, you can just describe what problems you are seeing on screen, and it will just continue working and it will fix it, and ultimately you can get it working. Okay. Doesn't always work with very complicated things. Simple things you can do, but the point is that you are now all programmers. Okay. Basic scripts. You want to do complicated things with Excel, you can just ask ChatGPT to give you the formulas, it will do it. If you want to do something even more complicated, you can ask it to give you the VB script, and it will give you VB script. How many of you know what to do with VB script? If ChatGPT gave you a Visual Basic script saying put this in your Excel and it will do what you want, how many of you would know what to do? 1 person, 2 people, 3, 4. Okay. Wrong answer. All of you know the answer now. Do you know what you should do? Ask ChatGPT. Tell it, okay, what am I supposed to do with it? It will give you very detailed step-by-step instructions, and you can make it work. Okay. It understands Indian languages. It's not great. You will notice a bunch of little mistakes there, but big picture, it understands. It can do translations. Not just that. I'm just going to show you this one thing. Here is a video.
सभी को पता है कि प्रदूषण स्वास्थ्य के लिए खराब है, लेकिन कोई वास्तव में नहीं चिंतित है। शायद तुम्हें पता नहीं होगा, प्रदूषण हर साल लगभग 6 से 9 लाख लोगों की मौत का कारण बनता है, लेकिन शायद आपको उससे भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा। मैं कुछ ऐसी बात करना चाहता हूं जिसकी जानकारी अगर आपको होती तो आपको फर्क पड़ता। हर साल 6 से 9 मिलियन लोग हम उस पर आएंगे, वो शो का। So, sorry, I think
because of the network lag, some of you could not see. I mean, the video was lagging a little bit, but in the real video, it was doing a pretty good job of matching the lip movements. The point is that this video was shot in English, okay, and I translated it to Hindi in 30 seconds using exactly 4 clicks. Okay, 4 clicks. All I did was go, sorry. Yeah, all I did was go to a website called 11labs.io, and there I went to 11labs.io, went to the part where it says, translate videos, gave it the URL of the video. Okay, it's already on YouTube, some existing video on YouTube. I gave it the URL. I chose the destination language. I didn't even have to choose the source language. I said, figure it out yourself. What is the original language? And I said, okay. 4 clicks, and it did a full translation, right? So now you should imagine what all can happen. What happens to education in India if all Khan Academy videos can be translated to local languages. In fact, for some of you, what happens if English research papers could be translated to your local language, right? Maybe it will make it much easier for you to understand and read and research papers, right? Of course, I'm not today going to spend too much time on creating images, and I'm going to stop here in fact. Let me see what questions there are, right? So can you just take a look at the questions that people have typed? Those who are online, you can type questions in the chat window. People here ask questions. Let's do questions for a while. Yeah.
So I was wondering about the reproducibility, right?
Yeah.
So when you gave your students these essays, right?
Yeah.
I do presumably had a larger class.
Yeah.
So what was the percentage, let's say, that they were similar, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, you want something which is non-reproducible.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have your code for having PDFs,
Yeah.
you want something that's reproducible because you would
Correct,
rather
yeah.
have it work.
Right.
So how do you think these two can balance?
Yeah. So, good question. Let me take this as like 2 separate questions, right? One is that when the students were asking ChatGPT to write an essay, and if there's a large enough class, will all the essays be similar to each other? The answer is that if you give a very generic one-line prompt, then there is a good chance. I mean, they're still different from each other, but after a while, I mean, the individual essay, individual sentences will never repeat. It will always be different, but some of the themes, some of the structure, you can start seeing similarities. Okay, that does happen. But if you use the techniques that those students were using, then after that, all the essays become very different from each other, right? Because one of them is saying, use an analogy. One of them is saying, think of it as if you are founder of a startup. Somebody is saying, think of yourself as an English teacher, and so on. So they become very different from each other. The second question was, you don't want the answer to be different every time, right? So for example, when I was creating that program with PDFs, and every time I tried it, I got a slightly different program, and the second time it didn't even, once it didn't even work, right? So that's actually a more difficult problem, and that is going to be one of the big problems that the world has to solve before ChatGPT gets. See, by the way, I'm using the word ChatGPT as a stand-in for LLMs. Okay, any of these technologies, Claude, Gemini, etc. So before the world starts using ChatGPT, there's a whole bunch of applications where you want reproducibility, or more precisely, what you want is that there should be a guarantee that it is doing the right thing. Okay, and that is right now an unsolved problem. What companies are doing for that is that first come up with evaluation criteria. Okay, so in case of our PDF example, there should be tests which upload known PDFs and check whether it points out the correct differences, it doesn't point out spurious differences and so on. And those tests have to be run regularly. Every time you use that prompt on ChatGPT, you run the tests, you see how many failed. Then, depending on how they failed and what has failed, you usually change the prompt. You add an extra line. If you notice, there was one line in the end that I had used saying do not use React, because what ChatGPT tends to do is it creates a program that uses the library called React, and then it doesn't work on my laptop because I don't have React, right? So I added that. After a little while of trying something, I might end up putting another line saying that make sure that before you give me the final code, make sure that there are three windows in the output, and so on. So over time, the prompt keeps getting longer. That is one thing they do. The other thing they do is to have human evaluators who take a subset of the answers every day or every week or whatever the program has done, and check whether it has done the right thing. And every week you track what is the percentage of good answers. And you say, well, 95% is good enough, right? When it falls below 90%, then you have to do something. Stop using it or change the prompt or give it more training data or something like that, right? But very good question. This is an unsolved problem. Large companies with teams to do this kind of evaluations will do all of this. They are already doing. But on an individual level, usually there are not so many examples where we are doing the same thing repeatedly using ChatGPT, right? So most of the time we are okay with a little variation. So this problem doesn't show up as often in practice. Okay.
Can we get some questions from online?
Yeah.
Narendra Joshi.
Oh, okay. So great question here. ChatGPT makes stupid mistakes, but presents them with really good articulation. Okay. In fact, this is one of the biggest dangers of ChatGPT, which is that it makes stupid mistakes, but it makes them in style, right? If you tell it to write a program, the core logic of the program has a bug, but the structuring of the program is excellent. The variable names are excellent. The comments are excellent. So a human reading that code will see the way humans read.
That answer to the NCL question.
Yeah.
The last four were fictitious.
Oh, okay.
We don't know that.
Okay. Yeah. So the thing is that humans have simple heuristics that that if the grammar is off, then there is a good chance that the answer itself will be wrong, right? If the code structuring is bad, then the logic will also be bad. But all those heuristics go wrong with ChatGPT. And as a result, you can't trust the output just based on the structure, the articulation, how well it has been argued. You have to find deeper ways of checking the work, right? So if it is a program, you have to run it and see if it is producing the correct output, right? If it is creating an argument, right? The core argument, you have to go and check in the source to see if that is really the argument and it is supported by the source. There is no good solution to this thing, right? The big problem it is going to cause, it is already causing, and will continue to cause, is the following. Okay, I'll give you an example of an actual study. In a consulting company, this study was carried out, and they were given a task. Two teams. One team was told, do it by yourself. Another team was told, do it with the help of ChatGPT. Okay. The people who did it by themselves, okay, got an accuracy of, I think, 82%. The people who did it with the help of ChatGPT got an accuracy of 72%. Okay. Now, this task was intentionally picked to be something that ChatGPT can't handle well. Okay, ChatGPT makes mistakes. But how is it possible that human plus ChatGPT is worse than just human alone? The answer is simple. The humans using ChatGPT got lazy and they were copy pasting ChatGPT answers without using their own brain. Okay, I have seen the same thing in my own work, that once you have ChatGPT, the people stop thinking, or at least get lazier and start using the answers. So if you are not careful, you are going to do things worse. Okay. By the way, there is something called a jagged frontier. Okay, you can Google this phrase, jagged frontier. The point being that there are some things that ChatGPT is really good at, and there it is always going to give you a pretty good answer. But then there are some things that it is bad at, and there it is going to give you a bad answer, but written in very good articulation. And that's where you start making mistakes. Okay. So you have to train yourself to not trust ChatGPT and not use its output, right? So you have to continue using it as an assistant and not as a principal investigator. Okay.
Aditya.
A few more.
Aditya.
Can LLM crawl provided web URLs and summarize the detailed article instead of uploading PDFs? No, not really. Well, it depends, right? Sometimes ChatGPT is not able to access the article that you gave it. Sometimes it is your own article which is not there on the internet. So it depends. You can try it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, right? So often I find that uploading the PDF is easier and a more reliable way of doing it compared to having it search the internet, right?
Can we take a couple more online, and then
Yeah.
if
Okay.
anybody wants to ask, you can raise your hands. But which are good AI tools that can help with? Which are good AI tools which can help with designing electronic circuits from block diagrams or from overall circuit logic?
Okay.
You know,
No, sorry, that's
that would
not
be something
something I
which
have.
we'll have to figure out.
Yeah.
Ask ChatGPT.
No, by the way, you can ask ChatGPT, but it might give a random answer. So you have, it might give an interesting answer. Okay. So you ask it and then don't trust the result, go follow up and check by yourself. Yeah, I don't know the answer to it. Yeah.
So there is knowledge cutoff on
Hmm?
for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Knowledge cutoff.
There is a knowledge cutoff, but most of these modern ones are able to search the internet. So by the way, one of the things you have to be careful about is, remember when I did a search, the NCL search, I had circled the part where it said searched 4 websites. You have to check whether ChatGPT searched the web or not. Okay, because ChatGPT has a knowledge cutoff. Its own knowledge is only up till I think 2022 or some September 22 or something like that, and it doesn't know what has happened in the world since then. But sometimes it will try to give you an answer just based on its knowledge, and sometimes it will decide, well, this question requires me to check the internet, right? So you have to see if the answer requires latest information. You have to make sure it searched the web. If it didn't, you have to tell it, no, don't give me an answer directly. First search the web and then give me the answer. Okay. Yeah.
Navin, we can just take a couple of quick ones
Yeah.
if we can. Right, I'll just come back to you. Right.
Excuse me, I have been meeting.
Yeah, just okay. If you insist, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask a question regarding the garbage in, garbage out concept, which has
Yeah.
been floating around for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Especially in the research context.
Yeah.
If you're working in cutting edge areas where
Yeah.
not a lot of material is already available,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be more susceptible to garbage in, garbage out?
Totally. See, ChatGPT, what ChatGPT is, that it has read all of the internet, it has read all research papers, it has read all of Wikipedia, it has read a whole bunch of like 20,000 books, okay, and it has understood the common patterns in all of that. Okay, what that means is that for things that are well known, things that are common knowledge, it is pretty good at having understood the patterns and giving answers. But for things that are uncommon, things that are cutting edge, things that are just latest research, it probably doesn't know, but it will still guess convincingly, right? So cutting edge things you should not be using ChatGPT, right? The reason I asked the questions of have you used ChatGPT for 10 hours is that after about 10 hours of usage, you start to get a feel for which question I can ask ChatGPT and which one I shouldn't. Okay. So when you're doing cutting edge research, there is still a whole bunch of very basic things that are kind of boring, but need to be done. Use ChatGPT for those kinds of things, but for the cutting edge things, you have to do it yourself.
You could use the notebook.
The notebook LLM you can use as in you have collected together a bunch of recent papers, but there again, in terms of asking the question, that what questions to ask, that has to come from you, right? It will not be great at coming up with questions. It will be good at coming up with answers from that set of papers. Yeah.
Okay, so we take first one online, one offline.
Yeah.
Okay, let's quickly go to.
Read the question.
Yeah, okay. ChatGPT Playground is great for research, but I'm not sure of how to use it. Well, see, this is a tricky one. Okay, ChatGPT Playground is, I mean, if you search, there is some, I mean, on OpenAI website itself, there is a section called Playground where you can give your questions directly and you can control a whole bunch of parameters. Oh, hold on, what happened? Yeah. You can control a whole bunch of parameters. One of the most important parameters is something called temperature. Okay. If you increase the temperature, the answers become more creative. And if you decrease the temperature, the answers become less creative and more precise. Okay. So by changing the temperature, you can vary the answers. But still, it is no guarantee that you will, the number of errors will reduce drastically. So, I mean, if you're not sure of how to use Playground, you can just ask ChatGPT itself. It will give you a fairly decent overview, or you will find tutorials on the internet. But to a large extent, I would say that unless you have used ChatGPT already quite a lot and you're running into problems often, don't bother. Okay, it won't make it that big of a difference unless you are a power user already. So first, get to just using it normally, and then you can move on to doing things like Playground. The other thing is that there are specialized tools for research, like something called Elicit.ai, Consensus, and so on, which are written with research in mind. They read research papers and they give specific references to research papers and the sections there and so on. So you should consider trying those out in addition to ChatGPT, right? Do both.
So any offline question? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so my doubt was mainly around the ethical usage of ChatGPT, like for scientific publication. So will there be like any institutional restrictions, or should there be any institutional restrictions so that we prevent like misuse or something like that?
Okay. The answer is yes and no, but why don't you tell me what you think of as misuse?
Okay, the misuse, I mean, like we had the shown case a few like in the early 2000s where like people actually focus a lot on publication and hence resort to unethical means. And
Yeah.
apart from misuse, there could also be like the issues of like maybe faulty data analysis that people, and where it tends to make very article with mistakes that people cannot find out.
Yeah. So, I mean, all the things that all the things that I said earlier about the fact that ChatGPT makes mistakes and you have to check it, right? Those apply even more when you are using it for help with research, right? So if ChatGPT, you can use ChatGPT to do analysis, but then you should look at the program it generated for doing the analysis and make sure it didn't make an error. Or you can do spot checks, like, it has done analysis of all of it and it has come up with a table with say 13 rows. You can check row number 5 and row number 9 and double check whether the answer is correct, and that increases your confidence that it hasn't made an error in the calculation. So all the calculations and graphs and things like that it has done, you should still double check. The other problem with misuse of ChatGPT that is widespread is that people use ChatGPT for writing the papers for them. And generally, it's a bad idea if you're going to just copy paste all of ChatGPT's output into the paper, right? What you should be doing is that you should be writing the paper and using ChatGPT to just fix stylistic things. You should use it to fix, say, the grammar, or make it more concise and things like that. You shouldn't be using it to write the paper itself. That, like I said, by definition, a paper is cutting edge, and ChatGPT won't be good at it. The core of the paper should come from you. Okay.
Move to online questions.
So the next question is from the admin, like plagiarism can be the issue. Since tomorrow, if we develop any platform based
Yeah.
on our idea or algorithm, is there any possibility that in future no claims can raise
Yeah.
from any AI company?
All right. So basically, the issue I think is more related to copyright rather than plagiarism. And there are two different questions here, right? One is that if I use ChatGPT to generate a program, and then that program gets used in my product or my research or something, and it becomes popular, can ChatGPT come and claim authorship? Can OpenAI say that, well, we are really the owners of this and you give us royalties? The answer is very clearly no. All of them in their terms of conditions have put very clearly that they don't own the copyright. You do. Okay. The other question really is that, and this applies a little more to image generation, but can apply to text and program generation also, is that, let's say, I'll give a very easy example. Okay. You use ChatGPT to generate an illustration for one of the articles you wrote. Okay. And ChatGPT comes up with a very nice illustration. And then later on, it turns out that this illustration used a style which was popularized by one particular artist in the 1990s. Okay. Now the question is, ChatGPT is not going to claim copyright on this, but that artist can come and claim copyright. And then the question is, what happens? Okay. And there are two real answers to it. One is that this is a legal gray area. Nobody really knows what will happen as far as such copyright claims are concerned. There are, like, I think about a dozen cases in court right now, all of which are under litigation, and we don't know which way it will go. The other thing is that most of these platforms, so OpenAI and Claude, definitely, and I think even Google, all of them in their terms and conditions, they have said that if you use our platform, we indemnify you from any copyright claims. So they are, I mean, they're so worried that people will stop using these platforms because of copyright issues, that they are putting their weight behind it, saying that if you get sued, we will figure it out. We will defend you. We will pay for it, things like that, right? So if you think that will truly work. In general, though, what I think is that for doing things like research, I don't think this is a big problem. I have written an article which goes into this specific issue in a little more detail. I can post that link somewhere.
Any questions from audience?
The indemnification that you mentioned is valid for even the free versions?
Yeah. So I don't know. I will find out and check.
How the data will be secure for if you uploading the image or the something for paper writing?
Yeah. So the question is that when I use ChatGPT or any of these, I am putting in a whole bunch of my data there. And is that secure, right? What about my data? What about my privacy and so on? So there, the questions really are the following. One is, I mean, is there somebody there sitting trying to look at the data and steal ideas from you? That just seems very unlikely, right? Because so many people are using ChatGPT, and ChatGPT doesn't have a team of people looking at this anyway. I mean, if you are, say, Samsung, and you are worried about Hitachi stealing your ideas, then maybe you want to be careful. But as an individual researcher, I mean, what's the real problem? But to give a more precise answer, the other question is that will the data I uploaded be used by ChatGPT to train their next version, and then in some of the answers, some of my data starts showing up, right? So again, the two answers to that are: one, if these companies use your data to train the next version, your data is such a tiny part of the whole data. The total data they use is about 10 trillion words worth of data. Yours is almost nothing, right? So very likely, except for extremely common things, ChatGPT isn't going to remember any of that. But again, in all of these, if you go in the settings, there is a setting which says that don't use my data to train your models. You just turn it off, and they promise that they will not use it, right? So then it is completely secure.
So the next online question is from Vatsal Shah.
Yeah.
So he's asking, can apps developed entirely by GPT be hacked easily as compared to human developed peers?
Very unlikely, right? In general, human peers will make more mistakes. I mean, security related mistakes. It is likely that human programmers are going to make more mistakes than ChatGPT. The bigger problem is whether there are bugs in the code. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about the security issues.
If you don't mind, Navin, we'll stop
Yeah,
here.
sure.
This is a panel.
Yes.
We require you to also participate in that.
Sure.
But after that,
We can have the email ID of sir so that
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
ask the
some
question.
this time, right?
Okay.
Can we start?
So we'll move to next part of the event. So this is a panel discussion. We have three panelists, and along with our speaker and moderator, Dr. Prerna. So first, I would like to invite our panelist Chetan Gargil from Dr. Chetan Gargil from CPD-NCL. And another one, Dr. Ramrup Sarkar from CPD-NCL, and Dr. Adurba Sen Gupta from PMC-NCL.
Okay, I just thought we'll have a short discussion with Navin with a little bit of focus on application and research, right? I wanted to actually start by asking our colleagues here of what they use or what they plan to use or what they follow, what they track, and what are their what are the good things they see and what are the reservations they have. And then we can address some of those as we go along. Okay, so Chetan, you first.
So generally, at least personally, I've been using it only as a literature survey. Summarizing information that is already there. I was not aware of this open notebook concept very well. That I think will be much more useful than just asking it questions. I tended to use it as a last check before I submit a paper. That has this been, and to my surprise, of course, this old 3.5 hallucinated and gave me a perfectly reasonable looking answer, saying that well, these guys have shown in I don't know, MP, that is that's it. And with accurate, I mean, looking references and all, right? With real journals, real looking page numbers, even GOIs. And but of course, I wanted to go look them up, and they were non-existent papers. So that is one aspect I think that they need to also highlighted, that you have to be beware of these hallucinations. The other, I think, is in the industry, from what I hear from friends, etc., is that people are starting to use, I mean, maybe not particularly ChatGPT, but some version of ML at least. But also ChatGPT in things like Hazard. So, when before you commission a plant or you finalize a plant, you do these hazard, you what if scenarios. And I think software is getting to the point where things that took 3 days are, because the software is it is learning and suggesting scenarios. Of course, no company, because of the reproducibility issues, will ever trust a completely AI-based, even typing diagram. But I think many of these are much, much better now because of learning from previous typing diagrams. Research-wise, I completely agree that because ChatGPT is good at answers, not questions, and the heart of every research is the question. So, if you have asked the right questions, then it is a matter of technique, and therefore, ChatGPT will only be, like you don't code in assembly language anymore. You use MATLAB. Now you use ChatGPT to, so it is an evolution in that space that you are not as much specialized. Also, I think one point that came across is much more democratic. Now, I don't have to necessarily be an expert in the pollution code, as well as the reactor engineering, as well as the separations. I can just ask and get a idea.
Yeah, over to you. I think you can tell us what you use, what you plan to use, and what you're hesitant to use, and what bothers you.
Okay. So yeah, we have been using, I think, in different contexts. So as you mentioned, Claude, one of my students flagged it, and they have been using it a lot. For also understanding what code written by others means for us. So we are a computational biology group where we have to use other people's codes to develop our own codes. It may be something completely different. You're doing something completely else, but you may need parameter sets or you need something else. So I think with using Claude, we were able to really understand, certain very complicated, because that code was also not written by computer engineers, so they were very convoluted code. So that really helped us. So Claude was something that was very useful for us. I've also been using it a lot for classroom teaching because I have a very hands-on way of teaching and I want people to do the experiment. So for every class, generating about 10 to 20 snippets of code, which will do the thing for you. So we do something 10 times in class and some of my students are there. Let's say you flip a coin 10 times, but then you want to write a code quickly to flip it 1,000,000 times, And really, I'm not sitting the night before and coding all this. Sorry, guys. That's the thing now. But yeah, you check that the code works, and that's been really useful as a teaching tool because I do teach a lot in different forums. So that's not the only class I'm doing for other things. But the thing that's really exciting me actually is something maybe a little bit different, which is to use all of these for in the biology domain. Right now, as biologists, like when I was growing up, people said, okay, maths, programming, stats is not a tool of biologists. Right now, every biologist needs to know a lot of statistics and a lot of coding. And in fact, they've been using this, a lot of these LLMs are now being trained. So we have been training it to understand English or Bengali or what have you, Python or Fortran. Now they're trying to train it to understand genomic data. So there's something from Broad Institute called Genome Analysis Toolkit that's coming out really well. So it can take terabytes of genomic information. I think a lot of you will now understand it much more. Let's say I give you different variants of COVID. How do you know which one is worse or which one is better? What do each of these single point mutations or indels or copy numbers, what would that mean for us, Because these are patterns that we really can't get from the human eye with a series of just 80 GCs. Right? Or in the case of COVID, 18 GCs. But still, I think that precisely is how we now take this from what we have learned from spoken languages, programming languages, to biological languages.
Ramroop Sarkar. You said you had some strong views. So let's hear them.
No, I have more cons than pros, but anyway, so before telling that, so I'm trained as a mathematician and statisticians, and I'm more prone to more classical approach of doing modeling. But yes, we do a lot of research on ML based, where you do a classification and predictions based on machine learning algorithms and so on. Frankly speaking, I haven't used ChatGPT per se, but definitely I have used some of these LLMs like Grammarly for like that I was mentioning to check the grammars and all those things. And we have been using GitHub for coding and the programming, so that helped a lot. Particularly the students who are non-computer background or non-math background, for them to code, to learn the basic codes and all those things. But again, the cons are definitely what we have observed is that you need to check whatever you are doing. Even if you take a code from GitHub and all those things, whether really that is giving you the expected results or not, that is one thing one has to keep in mind. We have been cross-checking, cross-verifying those things repeatedly. But definitely this lecture by Navin was very helpful to know a lot of things of ChatGPT. I will probably start using ChatGPT also. Yeah, but yeah, so there are 2-3 things which came to my mind regarding using of these OpenAI platforms. I've been reading several articles once when I told me to be here. So there are 2 things, two groups actually, 2 problems. So one is definitely which is depends on the backend process of what OpenAI is doing, based on the models on which it is learning and training and predicting. So there comes that what it is doing, we don't know the platform. So anything happens wrongly, we have no way to go back and cross-verify first step. In fact, that is probably one reason where the companies who are using these AIs, they are also very skeptical about using these AIs because we don't know what really is giving. And the consequence definitely is the accuracy and probably biasness of having, but that again depends on what type of data you are using, and it can be overestimating or something also, or giving over accuracy, which is not expected. So that is one part. And second part, anyway, we discussed that we were clarifying a lot of issues like this copyright violations, confidentiality, and all those things. So that's the con part of using the AI. And I'm also very skeptical about using that very carefully so that you don't fall into those traps using that. I've been recently, I just want to share one aspect of using this OpenAI. Don't take me otherwise, you should not say that I'm not favoring OpenAI, it's required. But I recently read one article from Harvard Business Review. The article that OpenAI is actually causing a lot of ill health and loss in sociological interactions. And they actually have done 4 experiments on different groups of people, computer engineers, biomedical engineers, real estate people and all those things. And they found that there is a huge loss of social interaction because people are too much using and they are self-sufficient, using everything, using all the information, whatever they want from their computer and mobile, but they are not interacting with their friends, families, or the colleagues in the office. Social media or it's for anything, whatever they are using, even for notifications and all those things you don't discuss. So the result is that if you get all the information, ChatGPT definitely you get, but you are not discussing with your friends, you are not getting some spark ideas, which will also help. I don't know whether I should have on that, but this is what is also happening. And they found that there are a lot of loss of health, loss of social interaction, loss of mental illness to those people who are using more this kind of thing. And this was the study. Your correlation method. Yes, I'm not but I just want to highlight one. We let Navin respond. But are you done? Yes. Okay, but I just wanted to point out a few things as well. So, Navin, one of the things that really I found interesting was that, this is actually, when you're using some of these techniques, you're taking a whole lot of data and, getting, say, an insight, a small point out, right? Yeah. And that's roughly how we do our hypothesis generations, yes, in research itself. So when you said, that we may not help you with questions,
Actually, it might,
So it will help you with the background,
Yeah.
what has been done, but what you should do.
You could probably even create,
No, I agree, it can help you with questions, it can help you with insights, because the good thing is that it is really good at thinking out of the box, right? So if you give it the overall context, and you say, give me 10 interesting out of the box questions related to this or
Yeah.
hypothesis, right? We'll come up with something, 9 of them might be completely stupid or useless, but one might be interesting in the sense that it is not necessarily a great insight by itself, but it triggers some insight in you.
Yeah.
And if the first one doesn't do it, you can say, okay, give me 50 more, and it will come up with 50. And it doesn't take you too much time to reject 49 out of those as worthless, but that one that comes out
Yeah.
could still trigger something in you, right? So usually I would say that it is not the one that is going to come out with like a great insight, but it could totally trigger something in your brain.
The other related thing is actually, this whole issue that some of these AI tools are actually coming out with inventive ideas. And in fact, there's a big argument about whether AI should be considered an inventor or not, right? And there are different schools of thought about that as well. In fact, I think that's another very interesting aspect, which is something which we should think about. But I think, Naveen, you can first address some of these issues.
Yeah.
We, of course, we'll try to finish in a while, but we can take those up, some of these points, and then we can come back with one more round where we discuss a little bit of what's pros and cons of using it for a research environment, right?
So I think what you said, I think it's very important to just repeat again, don't use ChatGPT 3.5, use at least 4.0. Often what I do is I put the same question to both ChatGPT 4 and to Claude 3.5 and take the better answer out of those. And definitely involve it even in earlier stages as long as you are in control, right? What you said, I think that was extremely important. Both, I mean, one is that in terms of understanding other people's code, these things are excellent at this, right? And it can explain to you what is happening in this line and why is it this way, and so on. More than that, what you said about use of it in actual genomics. So I didn't talk about this, but there's a lot of work going on in building LLMs for these domains, right? So foundational models that understand DNA sequences, understand gene sequences, and so on, to the point where now you can say, let's say, take a protein and modify one thing in it and ask it, what will this change do? And there's a fairly good chance that it comes up with a reasonable answer of what the effect of that one change or that one mutation in a gene is going to do. So there has been a lot of research in that, and I expect more and more researchers to start using those. So this is a fascinating area of research. In fact, some of you can just, those who are sort of on the borderline of computers and biology can get into that research because it is a new and upcoming field, right? Now, coming to the objections, I think to a large extent I agree with all of them, but also I think that those should be taken as things to be careful about, right? So, point is that our old behaviors will no longer work in this new world. Our old heuristics are no longer applicable. So we have to develop new behaviors. We have to develop new discipline for ourselves so that we don't misuse it. Right? Take programming for example. I mean, yes, ChatGPT can generate programs with bugs, and you have to spend a lot of time making sure that it hasn't made mistakes. But after doing all of that, it is still a big help, right? Earlier, you would spend 3 hours writing the program, 3 hours debugging it, and then you have a program. Now, you spend 5 minutes writing the program, you still spend the same 3 hours debugging it and testing it, and now the whole thing is done in half the time, right? So overall, pretty much what I have seen is that a 30-40% productivity improvement is possible for most even senior people, as long as you are careful to check everything, right? If you don't check everything, you will find out about the problems much later, and it will cause much more serious issues, right? Now, the one thing I disagree with is this mental health thing, right? I think that is more a problem with social media. There is a lot of research showing that since 2012, with the rise of Facebook and other social media, there have been problems. Mental health has gone down, especially in English-speaking countries, especially among younger women and teenage girls. That is there. I've not heard of LLMs being like a major contributor
It's
to
not a
this.
major,
Yeah.
but it has highlighted.
Yeah, but yeah, you have to be
Because
careful and
starting
don't
thinking-
use this as a substitute for human interaction. Human interaction continues to be important, most especially in research. The most interesting ideas and the most original research comes at the borderline of you and someone else who's doing something else, ideally in a completely different field. So you have to keep interacting with people. I don't think, and there is, yes, it becomes there's a temptation to use ChatGPT for everything else because being social and networking is an effort for most of us. But we have to make that effort.
Chetan, you want to say something, and maybe we can also,
No,
do you see any for students also? Is there a right or a wrong use? Right, and do you see any risks there? And do you want to ask Navin anything about how to deal with those things?
No, I think he's covered some of it in the sense that I think that was extremely good advice to first write your paper and then get it defined using these LLM tools. I think the old rules of if they are not your words, you have to cite them. Also applies to ChatGPT. I mean, if you are asking it to do something, then you cite it. There is nothing wrong with using it. But you have to, like everything, you have to use it responsibly and make sure which is your word, your sentence, your idea, as opposed to something that anybody, including a colleague or text from somewhere else has got. So that is one. The other is that there is this boundary from when you are an established researcher or you think at least you are an established researcher with a great deal of foundation and background in a particular subject. And then you want to extend using such a tool versus you are starting in a field and you are using a tool without being aware of the underlying assumptions and so on. So you will always get an answer. It will also look like a very good answer and a very good chart. But because you have not, either coded that numerical method yourself or run the, simulation yourself, you might lose that learning part. And that is one of the, I think.
So you think the depth of learning, maybe perhaps understanding it with different levels of nuances.
But it comes with the benefit of breadth.
Yeah.
Right, because now you are certain, it's like talking to a knowledgeable colleague in a different field is exactly ChatGPT, right, when you ask a question.
But Chetan, if you have noticed, you give a new tool to a kid and they start tapping some buttons and learn it much faster than us trying to read the manual and understand what exactly is to be done. The same applies here as well, I suppose, right?
It does, right? So that's why I'm not negating the benefits of it. I'm just saying that so it is the same, right? That when you wrote Fortran code or C or whatever, then you understood what everything meant. You understood what.
Yeah.
Now you use MATLAB. Now you use Google Colab. It's another level of not knowing what is behind the hood, under the hood.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it is okay. We all drive cars not knowing what is under. So, and that is a helpful.
Yeah, but you're assuming that the guys who built the car knew that, right? That's important as well. You don't want somebody building a bridge with chat GPT and you're trying to over it.
It has to be a validated thing. And I think this subject specific and validated things will really transform. Now it is more, I think this announcement went out onto some IT alumni group, and I am also helping that. So, of course, what people did was use Meta AI on Facebook to generate a haiku about somebody like me on a panel like this. Which I am not looking at, but I am really going to use.
So, two comments related to that.
Yeah.
One is more and more conferences and journals are going to have requirements that you disclose the use of AI in your work. In fact, this is, I think this is probably a good practice to include it in your acknowledgements that I have used AI for this part, right? That's best because even reviewers would like to know which parts are.
I think some journals already required it.
Yeah, that is one step. Second is as a student, you have to be careful to not outsource things which are needed for building your own foundations. Okay, so I don't understand chemistry, so I will use a simpler example from say maths, right? If you are a student and your teacher gave you homework that solve these 50 problems, the point of that isn't to see the solution. The point of view is to go through that practice so you understand that it becomes second nature to you so that the next level you can understand without having to think about it, right? Now, if you get ChatGPT to do all of that, then you are not going to build that foundation in your brain. And I'm sure the same thing applies even at the PhD level. When you are learning some new field, there are certain things that you have to do by yourself. Whereas there was a whole bunch of things you can and should outsource to ChatGPT, like Premnath said. I mean, in our field, it is true that a lot of 22-year-olds are now at the same productivity level as 27-year-olds because the 22-year-olds have adopted ChatGPT much more than the older ones, right? So you should use that as an advantage, use it quite a lot, but make sure you're not using it for things that are building your own muscles.
So just to add a quick point, what you mentioned, see, a PhD is given to certify somebody as an independent researcher, right? And not necessarily as a prompt engineer, right?
Yeah.
So I hope that at least is sorted out.
So I think I just wanted to reiterate your example, which I found fascinating, where you had the same task given to two groups.
Yeah.
One not using LLM,
Yeah.
who performed better than those
Correct.
without, because you would
Correct.
expect them to use it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the worry that I see a lot of people have,
Yes.
and that while the younger people may be faster at doing things, but they're also faster at being lazy about it.
Yes.
And that's very important that I have already, we use it in our group, we talk about it. And I've been getting texts where they say, okay, we used it. But I know it's worse than they would have if they would have written it themselves, because it tends to use words which are not common in our fields, or words that I know that they themselves have not used because I've heard them speak about it 100 times.
Yeah.
And I think that's one aspect that each and every person in this room should remember. Don't let it make you worse.
Yes.
Make it better.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything in terms of concerns or comments for students?
Yeah, I think most of the things
Or
are covered.
without
One
getting
thing I feel, one thing I personally feel is mostly the success which are coming up from OpenAI or any of these kind of AI-based platforms, the things which are very much rule-based or logic-based, because you easily can dig out that and you can train that logic in a much more rule-based thing. But the things which are much more chaotic, imaginary, and all those, I think they will not be able to replace. I mean, AI cannot replace those. So the imagination things, I think, should be triggered inside the students.
One thing, it's not necessarily another student, but one thing I want to highlight is that because all these things are so attractive and sexy. There is I think it should not detract young people from the joy and the inherent importance of experimentation. Right? It is much easier to, I mean, not experimentation in code, just like lab experiments. Because that I think, it is so easy to live in the computer world that it becomes very seductive. That this is, we can solve everything. But really, it is not. I mean, even physics, which is probably the farthest along, and then chemistry and biology, which is like a century behind in terms of theory, being able to explain how what things happen. Uh, there is no substitute for working with your hands, building things, running reactions, looking visually at things, etc. And yeah, these tools will help you automate and process images faster and maybe pick up things that you would not notice with your eyes. But there is, I think, they should not be in any way taken to negate or even slightly diminish the importance of working with your hands and doing real experiments.
Yeah, actually, that is going to be the last thing that ChatGPT takes over, right? Because
Automated instead.
physical things doing in person is the most difficult things for AI, surprisingly. The other thing I want to point out though is that you really can't tell what ChatGPT is good at and what it is bad at, right? Like you said, it is good at logic, but really that's not always true. There is a whole bunch of logic things that it just does so badly that it's funny. On the other hand, there's a whole bunch of imagination things that it does very well at. So, and I can't really explain or articulate which imagination thinks it is good at, which imagination thinks it is bad at, which logic thinks it will do well, and which logic thinks it won't. So, the only thing is to spend 10 hours with it, try all different things, and after a while, you start developing a little bit of a feel, saying that, well, this one it is going to make mistakes, this one it will do well. I think that's something I would recommend everyone do.
So, Navin, I was just going through some articles. Basically, there are in research, there's a whole bunch of tools which are available for, say, understanding the literature, summarizing it, all of those. Then there seems to be another whole bunch which is actually the hardcore science itself, where it's assisting somebody to do the science. And then there's a whole bunch which has got to do with just writing, writing papers and so on and so forth. And all of them, I mean, in my opinion, are interesting, right? Somebody, I don't remember who, but they were basically saying that should not be called artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence.
Yeah.
So, in a manner of speaking, augmenting people's capabilities.
Yeah.
But do you want to point to any specific tools people can look at? So, I just let me throw some names. You mentioned elicit and consensus. And another one is insightful, which is for curating some of the literature. And there is those for summarizing it, right, which you also mentioned. Then there are some more which are for, say, finding research gaps. This was new to me. I didn't know this at all. Something called Power Drill or Little Maps, which I hadn't heard of. So I'm going to go back and check this out. Perhaps you know something about it. Have you? Okay. So apparently you can also find gaps in existing literature, visualize relationships between different papers in the literature and so on, which I didn't know at all existed. Also about the literature review, size, space, Jenny. I don't know, is that something which you want to? Also about academic integrity, plagiarization checking, also scrutinizing papers, something called mirror think, which I didn't know existed as well. Data analysis you mentioned, and visualization, including ChatGPT's advanced data analysis, Julius, and so on. Peer review as well. So there's something called Hey Science, which seems to give constructive feedback for papers. So it's powerful actually, a lot of things, right? Writing papers, Grammarly, you mentioned ChatGPT. Also, some of the things which are add-ons or next level of Zoteros of the world, or for endnotes and so on and so forth, which basically is about formatting them. So quite a lot. this. So these can actually,
Yeah,
make
so
things
what
quite.
I would suggest, right, I mean, a lot of these even I have not heard of.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is that, I think you should put aside some time every week to experiment with these new tools. Okay, there are going to be new tools coming out on a daily basis. You have to approach them with some skepticism. Okay, all of them make tall claims. Only some of them are really useful. So try it out. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out, and it is completely okay if you try out 10 tools and 9 of them are a waste of time, right? Because the 10th one, which clicks, might save you so much time in the next year that all this experimentation will have been worth it, right? But also, one important thing to keep in mind is that repeatedly what has happened is that somebody comes up with a specialized tool to do something, and then the next version of ChatGPT or Claude gets so much better that without any of that specialized knowledge, it does better than that, right? So always be careful of that also, in the sense that you're using a specialized tool for something. Every once in a while, see what ChatGPT is currently doing for that same use case.
Okay, on that note, we close, right?